YouTube. So coming back with my part 3 of the NFL draft big board. So today I'm doing my wide receiver rankings, and since wide receivers generally has a deeper amount of picks than quarterback or running back, I'm going to do top 12 instead of top 10. Not a big difference, but anyway, move into my top 10. So top 12. So start with number 1, and he is the 6'2", 210-pound junior out of the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, and that is Laquon Treadwell. So I think Laquon Treadwell is pretty much the clear-cut number 1 for me. Some people have Michael Thomas, maybe even Will Fuller combating him for number 1, but I think that Laquon Treadwell is the clear-cut best player in the class for the wide receivers. He really is a fantastic receiver. I watched him much of this year, Alabama game, Oklahoma State game, Arkansas game. Had a fantastic game in each one of those games, and really just, I think I can't say athletic. He's a better athlete than pretty much any other receiver in this class, in my opinion. I mean, obviously there's going to be someone that's maybe a little bit more athletic. Coleman comes to mind. But, like I said, I think Laquon Treadwell is the clear-cut number 1. I think he's going to be a top 10, maybe not top 10, top 15 pick. And that's where he projects for me. So number 2, I've got the 6'3", 210-pound, I believe, junior out of Ohio State, and that's Michael Thomas. So Michael Thomas is a very good possession receiver. He will be a good number 1 or number 2 receiver for a team, a very reliable guy probably for a long time. I haven't projected, obviously, as a first-round pick. I think he's going to go in the top 20, maybe slip into the top 25. So move on to my number 3 receiver. I've got the 6 foot, 184-pound junior out of Notre Dame, Will Fuller. So I think Will Fuller projects also in the top 25. I don't really think he slips down into round 2. I think at the very least he slips down to the very end of round 1. He's a very, very fast receiver, got very great very, very good getaway speed, very good deep threat as well. I think he can fit in well with a lot of the lower teams in the first round. I believe in my mock draft I'm going to the Seahawks. That seems like a pretty good fit to me. Anyway, move on to, actually he might have been going to the Jets. Either way, move on to my number 4 receiver, and I have the 5'10", 190-pound junior out of Baylor, and that's Coleman. Now, I have Coleman projected as a first or second round pick. I think that his size might hurt a little bit, but anyhow, he's a very, very athletic, very good receiver, extremely fast as well. Just put up monster stats this year, had somewhere in the ballpark of 20 touchdowns, over 1,200 yards for Baylor, but he does leave a year early, and I think it's a pretty good move. Either way, I think he'd be a first or second round pick this year or next. So move on to my number 5 receiver, and I've got the 6'2", 200-pound junior out of Pittsburgh, Tyler Boyd. Now, Tyler Boyd projected a lot higher at the beginning of the year, but guys like Coleman, Michael Thomas had very, very good seasons, and Tyler Boyd had a little bit of trouble this year as he was pretty much locked off every single game. It seemed like he had stuck on double coverage every single ACC game this year. Still managed to come up with about 950 yards and 9 touchdowns this year. So a good year nonetheless. I still think he's a very, very good receiver. Again, projects as a second-round pick to me. So move on to my number 6 receiver, and I've got the 6'2", 195-pound senior out of TCU, Josh Doctson. So Josh Doctson was an absolute animal while he was healthy this year. Him and Trevon Boykin worked very, very well together. It really was a breakout year for Doctson. Very athletic guy. I can see his game translating to the NFL. I haven't projected as a second or third round pick, but I think he could fit in as a solid number 2 receiver for really any team. So move on to my number 7 receiver, and I have the, I want to say 6'1", 225-pound receiver. You have to look that up. Anyway, out of LSU, Trevon Durrell. I think that Durrell maybe should have stayed another year, but LSU does have a lot of threats at wide receiver and really all over the place except for at quarterback, and until they find a quarterback anytime soon, it might be a problem lasting for there. I have Durrell projected as a second or third round pick. I think a lot of people have him a little bit higher than maybe even Doctson and Boyd, and some people even have him higher than Coleman. I think he needs to get a little bit more exposure. I think it's going to be hard for him to gain a whole lot of stock in this draft class, just because he really didn't get to reach his true potential while he had Brandon Harris throwing to him. So move on to my number 9 receiver, and I have the 6'4", 215-pound junior out of Mississippi State, Darrunnia Wilson. So I have Darrunnia Wilson projected as a 3rd to 4th round pick. He had a good showing in the Belk Bowl this year. Granted, he had a good quarterback throwing to him, but I think he's a guy that will be very successful in the NFL. Like I said, I have him projected as a 3rd to 4th round pick. I think he's going to slide up a little bit. Like I said, good showing. He had a very good stretch run at the end of the season, and I think that's going to help out his draft stock quite a bit. So we move on to my number 10 receiver, and I've got the 5'10", 193-pound senior out of OU. That's Sterling Shepard. So Shepard is a big name. I've projected as a 3rd to 4th round pick. Very fast. He has good hands. Good route runner as well. Had a very good 4 years at OU. And while the quarterbacks throwing to him varied quite a bit, it was pretty much consistently at least a decent quarterback while he was there. I believe he went between, even at times, Blake Bell, Landry Jones. I think Landry Jones probably would have been his freshman year. Trevor Knight, and then Baker Mayfield. So, like I said, had a variety of quarterbacks to look at, really all different styles, and I think that's going to help him out a little bit. OU really did change up their style this year as well, went a little bit more air raid for the offense, and I think that helped him out a little bit. But also, there were a lot of other threats that I don't think got to showcase his true potential just because they had other guys like Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon, Dede Westbrook, and just Baker Mayfield using his legs. Sterling Shepard wasn't really the first option always in that offense. So move on to my number 11 receiver. I have the 6', 205-pound senior out of Rutgers, Leonte Carroo. I think that Rutgers, if they had had a more consistent quarterback this year, would have helped Carroo out a little bit more. I believe coming into the season, Leonte Carroo was about a top 7 wide receiver in this draft class. Slipped down a little bit. I have him projected as a 4th or 5th round pick. I think he can slide up a little bit, though. Maybe even go as high as the 2nd or 3rd round. I think this is one of the guys that's more important to have a good pro day, combine, and Senior Bowl. So move on to my number 12 receiver. And this one, again, was hard to pick, but I have the 5'10", 190-pound junior out of Oregon, and that's Bralon Addison. I think staying another year could have helped Bralon Addison a little bit. It was an up and down year this year, depending on if Vernon Adams is healthy or not. I think having a full year, probably with Dakota Pruckup, that's who Oregon is supposed to have next year, could have helped out Bralon Addison, see what he could have done under a full. There's no guarantee that it would have been a full year under that quarterback, but I think maybe another full year development could have helped him out a little bit. Like I said, I'm projected as a 4th to 5th round pick, and I think that's probably the highest he's going to go. So move on to my 5 outside, and for me, these guys are projected as rounds 4 and later, so day 3. My first one is the 6'2", 195-pound junior out of Cal, and it's Kenny Lawler. I think out of anyone that declared early for the draft, Kenny Lawler was probably the best move. He's losing Jared Goff, who knows is going to be the quarterback for Cal next year. Very, very good odds that he's not going to be as good as Jared Goff, and the offense is going to sputter for a little while. Lawler had a good year. Like I said, I think he'll go. I don't know if he's going to go above round 4, but depending on, what teams are looking for, I could see this being a guy that maybe even slides up to round 3, but I think that's the best case scenario. So move on to my number 2 on the 5 outside. Again, these are actually in no particular order. And I have the 6'1", 208-pound senior out of Michigan State, Aaron Burbridge. It's hard to get a read on Burbridge. He's a very good outside threat. I think he can go up and adjust to some underthrown balls a little bit. You can see that while Connor Cook had a hurt shoulder. Burbridge did get a look at a lot of good defenses while he was in college, so I think that's going to help him out a little bit. Again, should be a day 3 guy. Also a guy that I think could actually last a little while in the NFL. Like I said, I think he's a reliable pick. So move on to my number 3. And I have the 6'1", 215-pound senior out of Ohio State, Braxton Miller. So obviously this guy's athletic. Pretty much everyone knows who he is. Quarterback that switched over to receiver this year. Had a pretty good year, but also in a very, very, very crowded Ohio State wide receiving core. Not sure if Jalen Marshall's going to declare or not. I don't think he is. If he was going to be in my top 10. But Braxton Miller should benefit from having a decent amount of exposure. If nothing else, he'll just be a multi-threat weapon that any team can really pick up. I think he's definitely going to be drafted. I don't think a name like that is going to slip out of the draft. But, again, I think this is a guy that is going to have a good show out on his Pro Day, Senior Bowl, Combine. Prove that, he can actually stick to receiver in the NFL. So move on to my number 4 on the 5 outside. I've got the 6'2", 225-pound junior out of UCLA, declared early. And that's Thomas Duarte. I think Duarte could have used another year in college. I have a very high opinion of him. I think he can be very good. I think another year under Josh Rosen really would have benefited his draft stock. I think this is a guy that could maybe even slid up to me and maybe being a 2nd or 3rd round pick next year. Another year of Josh Rosen getting a little bit more accuracy and consistency under his belt would have helped Duarte, as he would have been the prime receiver this year. But nonetheless, I think he still goes in the 1st. Or I think he actually gets drafted, so I don't think it's all for naught. Like I said, I do think Duarte's good. He's a fast receiver, very, very elusive. I think he has a high ceiling as well. So move on to my last on the 5 outside, and I've got the 6'2", 188-pound junior out of Colorado State. That's Rashard Higgins. So Rashard Higgins came into the year very hyped up stats-wise. He was supposed to have a monster year, had a decent year. I think he's a guy that when you draft him, you really know what you're going to get. But also, I think he's one of the best group of 5 receivers in this draft. And if you're looking for a guy that maybe didn't get the best exposure in college, maybe still has a little bit of upside that hasn't been exposed yet, then I think Rashard Higgins is definitely that guy. So that covers it for my wide receiver draft, or my wide receiver big board for the draft. If you haven't checked out the other 2 videos yet, go ahead and do that. They're in the same playlist in my NFL draft playlist. If you haven't checked out the mock draft, check that out as well. I'll be coming back tomorrow with either tight ends or offensive linemen. I might do those in the same video. I'm not sure yet because the tight end class is very, very thin. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya. What is going on, YouTube? So I wanted to come back with my Broncos-Patriots preview, get a little bit into the NFL before the season is over. So obviously this is the AFC Championship game, and while most of my videos this year have been on college football, I've done a little bit on the NFL, but I have been watching the NFL all year, so don't think that I'm just jumping into it now.